We don't expect the highest standards of behavior from famous people.
We
by
assume
virtue
the
of
worst.
fact-
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
We assume the worst.
Nobody trusts politicians.
Honestly, I feel like there are very few people in the world that I can look to as a role model, church or otherwise. I think we've lost, and perhaps we never could. And now we just have so much information that we see people's faults and shortcomings.
Yeah.
But at least when I was a child, I mean, Hulk Hogan could do no wrong. This dovetails into another line of inquiry I had for you, which is about, I can't imagine, I would feel a tremendous pressure to not scandalize people, to not make mistakes.
Oh, constantly.
To present myself a certain way.
Yeah.
And which I think is very unfair. I think it's very unfair.
Yeah.
Because it loses the humanity of who you are. And in a certain set, I mean, I think we have to go deeper into the question of why people place those expectations on the modeling that you are to provide or the standard that you are to bear. Because I get it in a certain sense, like you are supposed to be an example in people's minds of virtue and holiness. But really, that's a desire for God. If I'm looking up the hierarchy, I have this desire within me for this perfect person who's going to love me perfectly. And I become disillusioned when I realize that they're not perfect. So it's almost like, is it the healthiest thing for the priest to play into that false projection? Like, would it not be more appropriate for you to let your hair down a bit more? Or is like, where's the line between you being real and authentic and having a drink and talking about Lord of the Rings and, oh, now someone's scandalized?
Right.
It's probably a tricky line, right?
It all depends on the situation and the thing that you're doing. But yeah, that fear of scandalizing people, I would say that's high on my list. If I'm looking at insecurities or fears, it's that something that I do or say is going to cause a scandal, and that, like, at my weakest moment or in a moment when I'm not at my absolute best, that's going to be the thing that forever puts somebody off from the church
Or from God.
Yeah. Like the number of times you talk to somebody who says that they had a bad experience with the priest, like the priest was rude to me.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling.
Yeah.
There's not much wiggle room for the priest to have a bad day as a human being.
So much pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. And you start to realize, now I don't have an issue though with the idea that priests have to be held to the highest standard, because there's a reason that a priest is held to high standards.
Mm-hmm.
What a priest is entrusted with is something sacred, and is something that's beyond him, and he's not worthy of it. And ask any priest, we know our unworthiness very, very well.
Yeah.
So there's a reason to hold a priest to a high standard that I think is valid, I think is important.
In the same way we would hold our parents to a high standard.
In the same way you'd hold a parent, a doctor,
Yeah.
your lawyer. There are certain things that we expect of people who hold certain positions. We've started to soften on that, though, like in certain places. We don't expect the highest standards of behavior from famous people.
We
by
assume
virtue
the
of
worst.
fact-
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
We assume the worst.
Nobody trusts politicians.
Honestly, I feel like there are very few people in the world that I can look to as a role model, church or otherwise. I think we've lost, and perhaps we never could. And now we just have so much information that we see people's faults and shortcomings.
Yeah.
But at least when I was a child, I mean, Hulk Hogan could do no wrong. Yeah, then he became Hollywood Hogan. The rest,
Yeah.
But there was a time, I think, where maybe that was just my naivete I don't know. But it felt like more of people's shortcomings were covered up. And now we want to uncover everyone's shortcomings.
Yeah.
And then all the actual scandals in the church make your life pretty hard.
They do. But so those scandals make life harder and different. I want to come back to something that you were saying, though.
Yeah.
Like that sense of, I want to be able to look to people and admire them. I want to be able to trust them.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good human desire, right?
Sure.
we're actually hardwired for that.
Yeah.
We are meant to be in those kinds of relationships where we can trust people. And I remember talking to a priest, this is years back when I was in seminary, and I don't know why. I think my car broke down or something. And so it was in the parking lot of a church, and he's like, "I'll give you a ride home." I was like, "Thank you. I really appreciate that. So you're just going to have to tell me how to get there." I said, "All right, well, I trust you know how to get to this place." And he goes, No, don't trust me. Trust God. And it was a joke, but it was serious at the same time. And it was a sincere spiritual lesson that I'm confident this priest would stand by. If I told him that he told me that I should trust God instead of him, he would say, "Yeah, that's right. You should."
You remember it to this day.
I remember it. It stayed with me. Like this idea of there's nothing wrong with trusting a human being.
Yeah.
But why should I trust that human being?
Right.
I should trust that human being because I trust God, and I trust that God has placed this person in my life.
Yeah.
Right. So why should somebody trust a priest?
Yeah.
Well, we should trust a priest because we believe that God has entrusted that priest with this care.
Yeah.
And that God has put this priest in my life for some reason.
Yeah. There's a proper ordering of things. We were talking before about, I can't get too far away from Tolkien. We were talking about how none of the characters are Christ properly speaking.
Right.
But they're all sort of Christ. And I think what that speaks to, which I think the author had a sense of, was that we can participate in Christ's love and manifest him by becoming conformed to Christ. But whenever we do, it may feel like we are God to others because we are giving love to others. But we're only participating in something that we are not the source of.
Yeah.
So it's still him. And we can experience good in this world, but we're experiencing him in this world. And the person is the vessel or vehicle for that. The more more we decrease, that he may increase. The more we grow in holiness, the more we grow in psychological freedom and in our own uniqueness and spontaneity to love. Like someone can have a real experience of God, real experience of the Lord, but the person's still not him.
Right.
And so it's okay to give space for the both and of, this is a really good person that can manifest God's love in my life, and they're not perfect. And I can have a rounded shade of gray, not black and white thinking about this person's the greatest ever or the worst ever, or I thought they were the greatest ever, and then the moment I see their weakness or their shortcomings, now I'm going to villainize them. Right. It's like the more you see others through that proper lens of who they are, through those shades of gray, as we're on our way home to God, the more we treat ourselves that way. Mm-hmm. So one's a defense against pride, right? So I did an awesome job. Not I'm the best ever. It's I got some help.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little boost from the Holy Spirit to like move me in that direction. Yeah.
Right. Or the other side, which is I screwed up. I'm not the worst ever. I tried my best. Right. It's a blending of the reality of goodness and not yet in terms of being perfected.
Yeah. And I think that we're dealing with a change in culture. So there was a time when you'd look at the priest as this is God's messenger on earth. Mm. And so culturally, there was a sense that priests can do no wrong.
Right.
The priests did everything, and nuns even more so.
My mother used to teach me that the homilies were infallible.
Yeah. So you have this sense, well, Father said,
yes,
therefore it must be true.
Yes.
He's the priest, and therefore he must be right. And it's really interesting because you talk to some folks and they'll say, like, my grandfather had a fight with our pastor when he was in his 30s. And it was kind of a big deal in the parish that my grandfather and the priest had an argument. Nobody argued with the priest, right? And I kind of I want to meet that grandfather. Be like, thank you for arguing with the priest. Yeah. Because he probably needed it.
Sure.
So there can be an exaggeration of a priest's stature that is really unhealthy. We think that this priest, he's got all the answers. So the priest can start to believe that about himself.
Yeah.
Right. But then we had this switch because it wasn't just the priest that always had all the answers, right? It was anybody who had a position of authority was considered to have all the answers. And so we respect them by virtue of the fact that they hold this office or they hold this position or they have this kind of a job.
Definitely.
And we couldn't imagine them ever doing anything that's wrong.
Right.
Well, then you have in the
Postmodernism.
60s, basically,
Yeah, it is.
but it started before then. I don't want to blame everything on the 60s, but it started before then.
Yes.
The sense of we're going to throw off all of the tradition and all the authority.
Can't trust anything.
Right. Never trust anybody over 30. Now that I'm over 30, but the idea that anybody in authority should be tested, should be questioned, and everything else. And then what happens? But even those in authority, whether that's in secular professions or in the church, start to say, well, maybe we should try to be more human. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be more fully human, like be
Sure.
who you are, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times that, what does it mean to be more fully human, became an exaggeration of I've got to get with the times and be more like everybody else.
Right. You lose the standard.
Yeah. There's a story that Fulton Sheen would tell about going to a college campus and talking to the students there and having them tell him, Bishop, we were really tired of our chaplain. And so the first thing we did was we told him, look, you can't try to be one of us anymore. You got to stop. It's not working.
Yeah.
And so they sat him down, and the first thing they did was they cut his hair. Because this priest in the late 60s, early 70s had just let his hair grow long.
Yeah.
So he was doing the whole hippie thing and trying to be like them. And the kids didn't want that. These college students didn't want that from their priest. No, we want you to be our priest.
Yeah.
We need you to be a father to us. We don't need you to be just like one of us.
Yeah. Yes.
And a lot of times the mentality for priests was, we've got to be more human and relatable. But the problem is when you try to be someone that you're not,
right,
you end up being that person that you're not badly.
Yeah.
Right? You ever try to I really want to relate to this person, so I'm going to I want to use all their language. I want to do this.
You're not yourself.
No, go talk to some high school kids and try to use their slang today.
Okay. You ever see the meme that's hello, fellow youth?
Yeah. Hello, fellow youth. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get lit, fam.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work,
No.
right? It sounds wrong. I love doing that to kids, though.
Yeah.
I'll pick up on certain phrases that they use, and I'm like, guys, tell me if this sentence makes sense to you. And I'll say stuff that they say, knowing nothing about what it means, and they get so upset. It's so much fun. Watching these high school kids just cringe and squirm and run away. No, I can't hear you say that. It's terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they know I'm just doing it to tease them.
Yeah,
but they don't want that from me either.
Yeah.
They don't want me to be just like them. They want me to be somebody else. But when we get into that habit, and I think this has happened to a lot of priests, and I've fallen into it myself. Right? I'm going to try really hard to just be relatable.
Which meets your natural human needs also.
It does. But that trying to be relatable on terms other than me being myself, being authentic, it means that in the attempt to be relatable, I'm spending so much energy on trying to be relatable that I'm not really relating.
Right.
I'm not actually present. I'm not actually with them. I'm so worried about appearance.
Yeah.
And that's actually what shows through.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes inauthentic. And so people start to think that priests are inauthentic.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Priests are just playing a part. They don't really mean it.
Yeah. It calls to mind the basic adolescent experience. Yeah. Where, it starts at younger ages, but it's very much accentuated when the narrative or the request or the position of the adolescent is, don't tell me what to do. Because they're seeking autonomy.
Yeah.
They're seeking independence because they know they're going to wake up tomorrow and have to live life on their own. So there's a part of them that's individuating and separating from their parents. But they're saying, don't tell me what to do. But they're also saying, please tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right. But not outwardly, but inside. Because, why? Because life is terrifying. They're entering into a brand new wide open space. It's like, Bambi coming out into the meadow. School is terrifying. Boys are terrifying. Girls are terrifying. Drugs are terrifying. High school is terrifying. Teachers are terrifying. Homework, college. So the teenager is terrified of the world. They're terrified of all these things. And they want some kind of frame. Mm-hmm. They want some sort of frame, and limitations and rules create security and trust. In our clinical work, we create a frame and we say, these are the rules within which I'm going to relate to you and care about you and love you. I'm not going to go outside of those rules. If I do, it's actually scary for you
Yeah.
You may want to call me at 3 a.m. when you're experiencing distress. But if I let you start calling me at 3 a.m., now you can't trust me. It's actually anxiety provoking for me to say, sure, call me at 3 a.m. And so structure, frame, boundaries, authority does provide some security. So that's why you don't want your parent to be your friend, and you don't want your priest to be your friend when he's in the role of priest. Not that you can't have friendship.
Right.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this clip and want to watch the full episode, be sure to click on the link up here, or you can trust the YouTube robots and watch an episode that they think you will like the most and click over here. Look down below, find that thumbs up symbol and click like for this episode, and also look over this way and find the logo for the channel and subscribe. I will see you in 5 seconds.